Hi, I'm Mike Beliveau, and today I'm down in the shop, and we're going to be doing some reloading of an obsolete black powder cartridge. Now, if you saw last week's video, you know I was shooting the model 1877 Colt double action revolver, and this gun is chambered in 38 Long Colt. And as far as I know, these guns were never certified for smokeless powder, even though this one was made in 1904. Now, the single action armies were certified for smokeless powder in 1898 or 1899, can't remember which. And that required some different hardening of the steel used. But as far as I know, they never changed this over. They're getting towards the end of the production life cycle of it, and they probably thought it was not worth it. So unless somebody can give me documentation that shows that they did that, and I would love to see it, I really would. Everything that I'm reading says that this should be a black powder only gun. Now, does that mean you can't shoot real light smokeless loads in it? Well, you can probably get away with that. Though I suspect, decent smokeless loads are the reasons why a lot of these old guns have broken down and gotten a bad reputation, because of course, the pressure curve for smokeless powder is quite different than for black powder. It builds early and hard. And if you don't have steel that's tempered for it, it can cause you some problems. So, anyway, that said, this gun takes 38 Colt ammunition. 38 Colt ammo is difficult to buy on the market, and a lot of it won't work with these old guns very well, because a lot of the current 38 Colt that you'll find is made with 3 57-inch diameter bullets, just like a 38 Special. And these actually have 3 75-inch bores, because the 38 Long Colt was a round that was used in the early cartridge conversion revolvers that had a 375-inch bore. And they changed that late in the cycle, and I'll tell you about that. But anyway, we're going to talk about how to load this. Now, the thing about 38 Long Colt is that people get confused by the cartridges 38 Long Colt and 38 Short Colt. Now, unlike 45 Colt, where people seem to think that there is a 45 Long Colt designation, and there is not. It's just 45 Colt. But with 38, there is a 38 Long Colt as the official name of the cartridge. And there is also a 38 Short, and often called a 38 Short Colt. And that's a different cartridge. And it has a shorter case than the 38 Long Colt. And the 38 Long Colt gets a little confusing because it actually has two different case lengths. Right, so when the 38 Long Colt first came out, it was made for this kind of bullet. And this is a heel-based bullet. And that means that this little base of the bullet here, called the heel, that's the only part that goes into the cartridge case. Right? So it only goes into the cartridge case like 1/8 of an inch. And the rest of the bullet is the full cylinder size. Okay, so with 38, we would load the same case as a 38 Special with a 357.357 inch diameter bullet, and it would all go inside the case. And they're called inside lube bullets because the lube is all inside the case, right? So that kind of bullet is expecting a 357-inch groove-to-groove diameter bore. That's how we do it. Now, with a heel-based bullet, even though it's 357 inches to fit inside the case, the driving band diameter of the bullet is the same diameter as the case itself, 375. So the whole thing makes a cylinder when you put it together. Right? The bullet, and I'll show you a made-up one here. There we go. Okay, so the bullet and the case are the same length. I'll just trick the focus there. Okay. And that's different from an inside lubricated bullet, which I will show you. It's right here. Trick the focus, I hope. And the bullet is a smaller diameter than the case, all the way up to the ogive. All right, this is the kind of bullet we use in modern times. Well, because it was based on cartridge conversions, the caliber, right? Originally, we've got this heel-based bullet, and the heel-based bullet was made to use a 0.88 inch high case. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of the bullet outside of the case, only 1/8 of an inch is going into it, right? Well, when they switched in the 1890s to using a hollow-based inside lubricated bullet, so this bullet could be shot in both 375-inch bores and in 357-inch bores, because in the bigger bore, the hollow base would expand to grab the rifling. In the smaller bore, it just acts like a plain old cylinder, right? So this had more of the bullet inside the case and less on the outside. So it used a 1.03-inch case, which is these two cases here, right? And those are both 38 Long Colt cases. It's not, we don't have a 38 Long Colt case and a 38 Short Colt case. These are both 38 Long Colt. Now the actual 38 Short Colt uses a 0.79-inch long case. So it's like 1/10 of an inch shorter than the short 38 Long Colt case. All right, so it's a different bullet. But it will shoot in 38 Long Colt guns. And why they developed it, I don't know. And actually, it stayed in production longer than the 38 Long Colt ammo. But, you know, just don't find any of them around anymore. Okay, so we're going to load this both ways. And I'm going to load it using a Lee hand press. And this operates just exactly the same way a bench press does. Uses the same dies, same shell holders. It's just that it's all handheld. And I've had this for, I'm going to say 40 years, 35 years, something like that. I mean, I used this back when I had no room in the house for a reloading table. This is what I learned to reload on. I don't use it much anymore. I've got a Dillon progressive press. I've got a Lee turret press. I've got 2 single-stage presses that are bench-mounted. But I like it for this, and I like it for a few other obsolete calibers too. I like it for this because, particularly with the heel-based, you're kind of operating by feel on some of this. Now, I actually have 2 full die sets. One for heel-based, and one for hollow-based. Because, I mean, the case dimensions are different, the bullet dimensions are different, everything is different. So you don't want to be, you know, if you load both of them like I do, you don't want to be tinkering around back and forth, adjusting expansion dies and bullet seating dies and crimp dies and blah, 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 blah. It's just cheaper to get another one. And I've got another set for 38 rimfire that I've adapted for that. And you've seen me load 38 rimfire before with that French die set where you hammer the stuff in. And I have gotten away from that. I actually had one of those shells blow up in my fingers while I was hammering it in. And I didn't get hurt. I mean, I picked up, you know, a whole line of brass in here that took about a year to work its way out. But other than that, it was mostly just the shock and awe of it. And I decided I can adapt normal dies to do that. And I could. And a big part of why this works is a company called Old West Bullet Molds. And I'm going to put their info down below. But I'm going to tell you that I am using a mold for Old West Bullet Molds heel-based bullets. I am using a special die they make for crimping 38 Short Colt. And it is very cool. I'll show you how it works. when we get to that point. And it works on 38 rimfire too, but they have different sizes, so it's different adjustment. That's why I'm going to set up a whole new set. Right now I'm kind of farkling back and forth with my heel base set. But they make excellent products, and you can actually buy cast bullets from them if you want to. If you don't want to cast your own heel base bullets, you can buy them from them. They come in 125 grain and 150 grain size. I've got their mold, and I'm casting 150 grain bullets, and they are excellent. Now, a lot of you know I have used Era's Gone bullets. I think I have one back here. Yeah. I've used Era's Gone heel base bullets to load 38 Long Colt in the past, and I've loaded a lot of 38 rimfire with these. I got away from them and went to the Old West bullet molds for two reasons. One, they offer a 150 grain bullet, which is more authentic for the 38 Colt. Two, they are sized at 375 already. Well, as cast, when they come out of the die, they're perfect. And the Era's Gone mold is a little bit bigger than 375. And I'll tell you the truth, that is perfect for paper cartridges, which is what I'm still using the Era's Gone bullets for. Because you want a little bit oversized to get a good seal on that chamber mouth. But you don't want oversized on brass cartridges. Because if they're oversized, they won't seat. You won't be able to put them in the cylinder. Right? So I had to size in a 375 bullet sizer, the Era's Gone bullets. And in fact, Old West Bullet Molds makes a top punch so you can size heel-based bullets upside down. So you don't deform the base. And that's very cool. And I've got one of those. But, you know, why do a sizing step if you don't have to? And their mold throws absolutely perfect 150 grain bullets, and that's what we're going to use. Reloading both hollow-based and heel-based bullets. So I'm going to start off with the hollow-based bullets because that's more like conventional reloading. So if you're already a reloader, it's pretty much the same as you've been doing. So we're going to be loading these 158 grain hollow-based bullets cast by a Ray Pine made mold. Now, unfortunately, Ray passed away a number of years ago, so you can't get a Ray Pine mold anymore. But Old West Bullet Molds, I'm pretty sure has a hollow-based bullet mold, so you can still cast up hollow-based bullets. So I've got my sizing and decapping die on here. Even though these are new cases, I'm going to run them through anyway. It's pretty simple. This is like a nutcracker arrangement. You just run them through. Another one, so I'm going to run them all through and get them ready to prime. All right, the next step is going to be to prime the size cases. I'm using Winchester small pistol primers. And I'm going to prime these off of the press. I'm going to use a Lee auto prime device, a hand primer. It works pretty simply. So pop a cartridge up there. It's got a special shell holder. Just thumb pressure. And we got a prime shell. All right. So I'm just going to prime them all up, and then we'll go to the next step. All right, once we've got the cases primed, the next step is to expand the case mouth, to put a bell in it, to make it easier to seat the bullet. So I've got the case mouth expander die on. Run it up in there. And all we're looking for is to open that up enough that we can start a bullet in it. Right, so it'll stay in when we run into the seating die. Pretty simple. So I'm just going to do the batch of these up, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Alright, so the next step is going to be putting powder in, but before I do that, I'm going to get some of these bullets lubed, because this is an inside lubricated bullet. So I need to fill these lube grooves with lube. And I do that just by rubbing it on. I could use a lubricizer, but I don't like doing that for hollow base bullets because I don't like the chance of deforming the skirt. So I'm just going to take a lump of my lube, which is 2/3 lamb's tallow, 1/3 beeswax. All you have to do is just rub it. I mean, it's a little time consuming, but you just rub it over those grooves and fill them up, and that's it. Right. So I got a bunch of those ready, and then when I put powder in, I'll be ready to pop bullets on right away. So I'm going to be loading them with 3F Swiss powder. And I'm going to be using this lead dipper, which is a 1 cubic centimeter dipper. And this throws 17 grains of Swiss powder, which will be a very good load for this cartridge. Okay, so I've got a little brass funnel. I'm putting it right into the expanded case mouth. I'm dipping up the 17 grains of powder and just dropping it in. And I'm just going to move from shell to shell until they're all filled. I've got the bullet seating die mounted on my press, and the procedure is very simple. I'm just going to take a case with powder in it. I'm going to take one of the lubed hollow base bullets. I'm going to just fit it into the belled mouth of the case, and then I'm going to send them up. And the result, lube off of it, and the result is a perfect 38 Long Colt ready to fire. So let me just do the rest of them, and then we can move on to the heel base bullets. All right, we're working with the 0.88 inch long cartridge cases now, and the heeled bullets. So the first few steps are exactly the same as they were for the 1.03 inch cartridge cases. We sized them, I primed them, case mouth expanded, and then filled them with powder. And I'm using the exact same powder charge as I used for the hollow base bullets, right, which is a 1 cc scoop or 17 grains of 3FG Swiss powder. And as I think you can see, the cases are filled much closer to the top than they were with the longer brass. But that's okay, because the only thing that's going in them is this bottom portion right here, the heel, right up to that first line. So that's all that's going to go in the brass case. And that's why the next couple of steps are the steps that are different for this, and that's going to be seating and crimping. All right, so now we come to the part that's different. And like I told you before, I keep 2 different sets of dies for 38 Long Colt. I've got one set up for the hollow base bullets that use the 1.03 inch brass, and the other one is set up for the heel base bullets that use the 0.88 inch brass. And the reason I do that is because otherwise I'd be adjusting my dies every time I changed cases or bullet types. And you just don't want to do that, right? So like the resizing decapping die, that will work fine for either one. You could get away with just one of those. But when you get to the case mouth expansion die, right, you're going to have the plug seated higher for the 1.03 inch shell casings, and you're going to have it seated lower for the 0.88 inch brass. Well, you don't want to be, adjusting this locking ring constantly up and down as you're going from one type of brass to another, because then you got to figure out where the right spot is each time, right? What you want is to get it right by making a few dummies. That's what I do, and lock it in and never change it. So that's why it makes sense to have a separate die set for the shorter cases and its own die set for the longer cases, because now I've got this locked in, never going to change. And the same thing with the ones for the longer cases. Right, so now we come to bullet seating. And bullet seating is where it gets different. Like I said, it's all been same, except for, a little adjustment on the dies. But bullet seating with heel-based bullets is different. And it's way different because even though this is a 38 Long Colt die, it's made with the expectation that you're going to be using an inside lubricated bullet. Right? So there's a crimp shoulder in here. And below the crimp shoulder, the body of the die is machined out 375 inches, right, to accept the diameter of the brass casing. But above the crimp shoulder, it's only machined 357 inches, 0.357, because it's expecting that smaller bullet, the inside lubricated bullet. But when you're using heel-based bullets, the driving band of the bullet is also 375. So it won't go past that crimp shoulder. So you've got to adjust your seating post way down because you need to seat that with the entire bullet, or at least everything below the ogive, that curve going up to the nose, has got to be below that crimp shoulder because it can't go past it. Right? So we're not going to go up very high, and I'm going to show you. And one of the reasons I like using a hand press for this cartridge is because with these heel-based bullets, you kind of have to feel it in. I mean, I've got it adjusted, but I'm only going to go up, right? I only went up that far. That's it. Now, usually when you're seating the bullet, I would have it adjusted so this handle comes all the way up and touches here. But you can't set the die up that way for a heel-based bullet. All right, so I'm going to pull it out and show you. All right, I'm hoping that you can see that. But that's all that's in there. Right, just that little bit. And of course, you can't crimp it that way. Right, I mean, all you can do is get a little bit of a friction crimp, but I can actually turn that bullet without too much difficulty. And that's not what I want. So we're going to crimp it as the next step. But first, I'm going to seat the rest of these bullets. So I'll just do another one for you guys. All right, just going to put the shell on there. And I'm just going to go up that much. Just until I can feel it snug. Okay, when I feel that, and you can hardly see it, but right around the top there, right where my fingertip is, there's a little line where that bullet is hitting the crimp shoulder. Okay, so let's do the rest of these up, and then I'll show you how I crimp them. All right, the final step in making your 38 Long Colt ammunition with heel-based bullets is crimping. And like I said, that can't be done on the seating die because we're using a bullet that's the same diameter as the outside of the shell case. Right, so that crimp shoulder can never get to the crimp. And I'll tell you, over the years, because I've been loading these things for like, I guess 30 years now. Yeah, about 30 years. And I have come up with a number of different ways of crimping these things. I've modified cable cutters, to do like a pincer type crimp on them. I've even made some crimpers that are done the way some 19th century ones are done, which requires cutting a groove for the rim of the shell and then inlaying a hacksaw blade. You got to use like oak or really hard wood, but you inlay a hacksaw blade so it sticks up like just 1/16 of an inch, and then you use a wooden roller and you roll the shell down that track so that hacksaw blade pushes a crimp into this. I'll tell you, none of those were satisfactory. And about 30 years ago, I went to John Lee at Lee Precision, and I asked him if he could take a Lee factory crimp die for 38 special and modify it so it would work with heel-based bullets on the short cases of the 38 Colt. And he tried. I sent him some dummies to work with, and he said they just could not make a die that was short enough. So for a long time, I didn't have a good way of doing this. I went along with mostly with my pincer technique. But Old West Bullet Molds came up with an ingenious solution. So what they did is they made a special shell holder. Right? And this is it. It's made out of brass. So I'm going to pull off the regular reloading shell holder that I've got on here. Right, just going to put that back aside where it goes. And we just put this baby in. And what that does is it raises the shell up. It makes the shell, the cartridge case, appear to be longer than it really is. So it'll work in the factory crimp die. And that's why you've got this big base here, so that can press up against the bottom of the crimp die. That's what makes the collets close up. Right, so I don't know if you can see in there, but there are 4 collets. And when you press on this base, right, see the base moves. When you press on this base, it forces those collets closed. And that's what puts the crimp on the shell. And I'll tell you, the guys at Old West Bullet Molds figured this out, and it is genius. Or as the Geordies would say in Britain, champion. Absolutely champion. So here's how it works. You just put the shell into the new shell holder, and we run it up, and we give it a good hard crimp. Pull it out, and we've got a nicely crimped shell. Nice and tight. Can't pull it out. I can't turn it. Looks beautiful. That's exactly what we want. So we'll do another one. You guys can see it. Put the shell in the shell holder. Crank it in. I like to give them black powder. I like to give a righteous crimp, like a good hard crimp, right? Because you want to get a good ignition. You want to delay that bullet leaving for as long as you can, so you get a good solid ignition of the black powder, and that is a perfect crimp. I'll try to trick the camera so you can get a good look at it. All right, so that's it. I mean, the only other step I showed you before is I'll melt some lube, and I'll just dip the bullets in the hot lube, and then they'll be lubricated and ready to go. Outside lube bullet, just like your 22 long rifle. I think it's the only bullet still being produced, cartridge still being produced, that uses this technique, is the 22 rimfire. But back in the 19th century, lots of them used that technique. In fact, they didn't change this over until the late 1890s. They went to the hollow base bullet. So for most of the gunfighter era, if you had a 38 Long Colt, that's what you were shooting. So I hope this has helped any of you who need to reload for antiques or for your conversion cylinders, for that matter. I load mine only with black powder. If you've got a conversion cylinder, you could use light smokeless loads. Use a good reloading handbook to look them up. But you can use light smokeless loads. I have several antiques that fire these. So I just load them all with black powder. I'd rather clean a modern gun than have an old gun blow up. So, and I love shooting black powder cartridges anyway. So if you liked it, you know what to do. Thumbs up. All right, give us a little hand with the algorithm. And I understand I've been getting a lot of complaints, I guess you'd say, from people who tell me they hit the notification button, turn on notifications, they never get notified that I've got a new video out there. And I don't know if this happens to all channels or just all gun channels. I've talked to a number of other gun channel guys, and they tell me the same thing happens. Every week they hear from viewers, just like I do, saying, hey, I don't get notified of your stuff. So I don't know if they're just picking on us gun channels or if it's a constant thing. I have heard that if you hit likes on the videos of the channel, you're more likely to get notifications. So if you got the notification turned on but you never like any of the videos, that YouTube will just ignore your notification button. I don't know if that's true or not. I honestly, You can't tell sometimes what's true and what isn't here in the YouTube world. But what is true for sure is that even if you have notifications turned on, you may not be getting notified. So I do my best to get the word out on Facebook, and that's the best I can do. So if you like them, thumb it up, give it a like. Hope you subscribe, and I'll see you again next week.